My friends, throughout world history, there have been historic documents that changed lives, altered the destinies of countries. I'm talking about the Magna Carta, the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Emancipation Proclamation, many others. And today we have a new one that joins those ranks. This letter from President Trump to the quote-unquote honorable Nancy Pelosi, not the phrase I would have used, will become a classic American document. You know, over 11 years ago when I started doing the show, I called it Real Truth, and the emphasis is on truth because truth is an endangered species in the media these days. There's very, very little truth left. Most of the media outlets out there are peopled by whores who are getting very, very big paychecks to go out and lie their asses off. Well, I've never done that. I've never been paid for doing this show. My mission is to put truth out there in the atmosphere and let it go where it may. I'm going to read to you this letter from President Trump because it absolutely sparkles with truth. And as this attempt to bring down the United States government, or at least hobble it or cripple it, goes on, it's more important than ever to get the truth out. So here is the complete letter from President Trump to Nancy Pelosi, dated yesterday, December 17th, and I quote, "Dear Madam Speaker, I write to express my strongest, most powerful protest against the partisan impeachment crusade being pursued by the Democrats in the House of Representatives. This impeachment represents an unprecedented and unconstitutional abuse of power by Democrat lawmakers, unequaled in nearly 2.5 centuries of American legislative history. The articles of impeachment introduced by the House Judiciary Committee are not recognizable under any standard of constitutional theory, interpretation, or jurisprudence. They include no crimes, no misdemeanors, no offenses whatsoever. You have cheapened the importance of the very ugly word impeachment. By proceeding with your invalid impeachment, you are violating your oaths of office. You're breaking your allegiance to the Constitution, and you are declaring open war on American democracy. You dare to invoke the Founding Fathers in pursuit of this election nullification scheme, yet your spiteful actions display unfettered contempt for America's founding, and your egregious conduct threatens to destroy that which our founders pledged their very lives to build. Even worse," he writes, "than offending the Founding Fathers, you are offending Americans of faith by continually saying, quote, 'I pray for the president,' unquote, when you know this statement is not true unless it is meant in a negative sense. It is a terrible thing you are doing, but you will have to live with it, not I. Your first claim, abuse of power, is a completely disingenuous, meritless, and baseless invention of your imagination. You know that I had a totally innocent conversation with the president of Ukraine. I then had a second conversation that has been misquoted, mischaracterized, and fraudulently misrepresented. Fortunately, there was a transcript of the conversation taken, and you know from the transcript, which was immediately made available, that the paragraph in question was perfect. I said to President Zelensky, 'I would like you to do us a favor, though, because our country has been through a lot and Ukraine knows a lot about it,' unquote. I said, 'Do us a favor, not me, and our country, not a campaign.' I then mentioned the Attorney General of the United States. Every time I talk with a foreign leader, I put America's interests first, just as I did with President Zelensky. You are turning a policy disagreement between two branches of government into an impeachable offense. It is no more legitimate than the executive branch charging members of Congress with crimes for the unlawful exercise of legislative power. You know full well Vice President Biden used his office and $1 billion of U.S. aid money to coerce Ukraine into firing the prosecutor who was digging into the company, paying his son millions of dollars. You know this because Biden bragged about it on video. Biden openly stated, quote, 'I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I looked at them and I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor is not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch, he got fired,' unquote. Even though Joe Biden admitted just days ago in an interview with NPR that it, quote, 'looked bad,' unquote. Now you're trying to impeach me by falsely accusing me of doing what Joe Biden has admitted he actually did. President Zelensky has repeatedly declared I did nothing wrong and that there was no pressure. He further emphasized that it was, quote, a good phone call, that, quote, I don't feel pressure, and explicitly stressed that, quote, nobody pushed me. The Ukrainian foreign minister stated very clearly, quote, I have never seen a direct link between investigations and security assistance. He also said there was, quote, no pressure. Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, a supporter of Ukraine who met privately with President Zelensky, has said, quote, at no time during this meeting was there any mention by Zelensky or any Ukrainian that they were feeling pressure to do anything in return for the military aid. Many meetings have been held between representatives of Ukraine and our country. Never once did Ukraine complain about pressure being applied. Not once. Ambassador Sondland testified that I told him, quote, no quid pro quo, I want nothing, I want nothing. I want President Zelensky to do the right thing, do what he ran on, unquote. The second claim, so-called obstruction of Congress, is preposterous and dangerous. House Democrats are trying to impeach the duly elected President of the United States for asserting constitutionally based privileges that have been asserted on a bipartisan basis by administrations of both political parties throughout our nation's history. Under that standard, every American president would have been impeached many times over. As liberal law professor Jonathan Turley warned when addressing congressional Democrats, quote, I can't emphasize this enough. If you impeach a president, if you make a high crime and misdemeanor out of going to the courts, it is an abuse of power. It's your abuse of power. You're doing precisely what you're criticizing the president for doing, unquote. Everyone, you included, knows what's really happening. Your chosen candidate lost the election in 2016 in an electoral college landslide, 306 to 227, and you and your party have never recovered from this defeat. You have developed a full-fledged case of what many in the media call Trump derangement syndrome, and sadly, you will never get over it. You are unwilling and unable to accept the verdict issued at the ballot box during the great election of 2016. So you spent 3 straight years attempting to overturn the will of the American people and nullify their votes. You view democracy as your enemy. Speaker Pelosi, you admitted just last week at a public forum that your party's impeachment effort has been going on for, quote, 2.5 years, long before you ever heard about a phone call with Ukraine. All right, guys, we're going to take a break. When I come back, we'll pick up right there in the letter from President Trump to Nancy Pelosi. You're listening to Real Truth.